Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good whatever time it is, wherever you are, whoever you might be, and welcome once again to No Nerd Caliber, the show in which we folks at Nerd Caliber talk about some of our top favorite things within a given aspect of nerddom, which we often tie into something fairly recent or a recent or upcoming topic that we'll be doing on another show. This one is tied into the fact that Full Fat Spoiler Chat this coming Thursday is going to be on the Eternals. So the topic tonight is our top 3 favorite interpretations of myths in any media, books,
in any culture.
in any culture. Well, or from any culture, or in any culture, I guess. But books, TV shows, movies, whatever, anime, etc. So there's not a lot that needs to be said about this, just that it has to be an interpretation. It can't be like if you are just a huge fan of Bullfinch's mythology, well, good for you. That's great. It is a telling of the Greek legends. So that's not an interpretation. It's a book used in schools. So it would have to be something different than that.
Yeah, neither could American Gods, because that's more of a what if.
Uh, I don't know. See, I would have allowed American Gods because it is a different interpretation of the myth in that it extends them out into, what would it be like if they, one, were real and therefore had to deal with the colonies, to deal with Americas. So you're right. It would be on the edge, though, because it is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But then again, one of mine might be, although it's hard to say. Anyway, before we get into that, let's tell you about our Twitch channel. We're trying to grow our Twitch channel. If you have a Twitch account, we'd love you to go to that URL right there, twitch.tv/nerdcaliber. Check us out if you would like to follow us. We'd love to have you on there. We're live on Twitch right now, in addition to YouTube Live, Facebook Live, etc. All right. We're going to get right into it then. So, Byron, Byron, bring yourself closer to your mic if you would.
All right, much better.
There we go.
There we go.
All right, Byron, if you could tell us what is your number 3 myth interpretation product, entertainment, IP.
My number 3 myth interpretation is one that's near and dear to my heart. Xena Warrior Princess. And it's an interpretation because, at least towards the latter half of the series, it extends itself beyond Greek mythology. It goes into Norse. It goes into Shinto. It goes into Christianity, and it pulls no punches. It's like, I remember in the 90s watching the whole Immaculate Conception storyline from Xena and just thinking like, oh, they can't use the term Jesus, so they use one of the many names used, which was Eli, the prophet Eli. And I remember cringing as a teenager watching it, but now I'm just like, it's a story that's being told. It's an adaptation.
Yep.
And they respected the mythos for the most part. They didn't try to insult Christians, even though you breathe them funny, a lot of them funny, they'll get mad.
I'm sure they got. I'm 100% sure that a bunch of them got mad about that. But
bring it. Yep. It's the fact that it branches itself out so much is why I chose it.
Yep.
If it had just stuck solely to Greek mythology, I wouldn't have chosen it.
See, I would say it would even be legit for that, because the way they interpreted Ares, the way they interpreted Aphrodite, all really interesting and sort of novel takes on the gods.
I can see that. To a lesser extent, Hercules did the same thing, but I hate Kevin Sorbo for the deep searing passion. If he died today, I'd be like, eh.
Yeah. well, let's not wish ill on anybody on this, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, even if they are antithetical to the concepts of Martin Luther King Jr.
Fair enough.
But still, yeah, I wouldn't put it on there. And I'm a big proponent of separating the creator from the product. The product wasn't good enough to separate it from Kevin Sorbo. So
Yeah. And Lucy Lawless, between the two, Lucy Lawless became more of an icon became more icon than Kevin Sorbo ever did.
yeah,
Like Lucy Lawless just she embraced the role, she embraced the performance, but she was able to do other stuff, and no one just thought, oh, like people saw her and like, oh, it's Lucy Lawless, like she was awesome as Xena, and it's like when Ash versus Evil Dead came out, I was like, cool, you're awesome in that, and now people are kind of just like, I want to see her as Cara Dune, so it's like she evolved from that, and that's the power of that role. It became so iconic,
yeah,
and it took a life of its own, and Lucy Lawless's career took a life of its own, and can't I can't end it here because it's got to talk about Renee O'Connor because she was the real reason I watched it, because there was a running joke on set where they called her Rock Hard Abs, which was because her initials are ROC, and that's how they spelled it. And anyone who knows me well enough knows that I love my waifus. So,
yep. Both of them definite waifu material. Both of
both of them
them
are waifus.
waifus.
Like waifu.
Well, yeah, yeah. I'm not getting the whey part, but okay.
Like whey protein, like. Grrr.
Oh, okay. Slid right over my recently shaved scalp here. But now that I understand it, this is a pretty good pun. But
Yes.
yeah, I wish I had gotten it. All right, good choice, excellent choice. So mine is, and this has actually come up in an alternate universe version or No Nerd Caliber as well. Is Harry Harrison and I'm gonna forget this name, John Home. Although this is an original book cover, which this is, Harry Harrison was the only one who got credit for it. The Hammer and the Cross and the whole Hammer and the Cross series. So it is a reinterpretation of Norse mythology and Christian history coming together in 9th century England, in which a young man named Chef, not like SHEF, caught up in the wars of the Viking invasions of northern England at the time, winds up getting inspired by what are apparently visions from one of the oldest of the Old Norse gods, one of the old ones behind Odin, Rig, in how to create better weapons and beat the English.
Wow.
And he winds up founding a sort of religion that is all about worshiping or honoring knowledge, and investigation and scientific research and so on. And it comes up directly in contact with the brand new, essentially Catholic version of Christianity, which is growing across the continent of Europe. And over the course of the series of books, it really does an excellent job of sort of looking at what this different Norse religion, because Norse didn't really have any kind of an organized religion.
No, they didn't.
Would be like if it then came into contact with pretty traditional standard Christianity.
So like the Church of Odin, the Church of Thor kind of stuff.
Well, no, it's literally just this one particular religion that that Chef founds, that is still the only organized religion based on Norse mythology. All of the others are built around shamans and wise men and so on. They are family and in some cases town or village. They're almost like Shinto in that there's almost no organized religion. Every region has its own thing, although they all kind of believe in some of those same larger things like Odin and Thor and so on.
Okay.
Chef is the only one who takes that and says, okay, here's a larger belief structure based around knowledge and science, but honoring the gods that are delivering to us this knowledge and science. It's just a really interesting take on what might have been with a type of Norse religion and how it might have come into conflict with the Christianity of the day. Good story. Good series of stories.
Sounds interesting.
All right. Number 2, Byron.
All right. My number 2 is a teensy bit of a stretch, but the two pop culture icons that have become synonymous over this decades, centuries now. All-Star Superman. Now, for those of you who aren't in the know, hear me out. The storyline of All-Star Superman is where it's an alternate timeline. Superman is struck down by a beam of red kryptonite, and he's on borrowed time at this point. He knows that he's going to die, so he tries to perform a series of final tasks of good before he leaves this world. And I liken that to the 12 labors of Hercules.
And in fact, there are 12 things he has set his mind to do.
Yes. The only exception is Superman didn't murder his family.
Well, yeah. He's not prone to murderous rages where he accidentally kills people he loves.
Yeah. And he's not, although I'm sure if Mr. Mxyzptlk wanted to, he got really bored. He probably could do something like that. Or maybe Brainiac.
True, but let's talk about this thing.
Yes. Yeah. So it was it's a storyline that is become legendary in the world of comics. Grant Morrison wrote this, right?
Yep, and Frank Quitely's the artist
yes.
that you see here.
Such a distinctive art style, and I love it. But definitely the writing is chef's kiss, like top tier. It was one of those stories that made me rethink my stance on Superman when I was much younger. Like, it made me just realize exactly what and who Superman really is.
Yep.
It's like he's always been to me now as a 30/ almost 40 something. I see him as the paragon of what we as people can be if we stop thinking about ourselves so much. And because you have people in this world who are, when they know that their time is up, they'll either wallow in their pity hole or they'll make the most of their life. And Superman represents the latter.
Yep.
Especially in the story, because it's just like I need to make these last days count.
Yeah. It's also a good exploration of, so you got to figure Superman knows that he's essentially immortal unless something comes along and kills him. And for him to then find out that that's not the case, and he is in fact going to die, and he knows when, roughly, does that change him? And it doesn't. If anything, it makes him double down on his own morals and beliefs. So it's a really good story.
And just to go off on a little bit of a tangent, it's I find it interesting how Grant Morrison, the man who wrote the story, has gone on record saying that he's tired of the dark Superman storylines.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you're like, if anyone watching this is kind of like rolls their eyes at the thought of Superman as a character, I highly recommend you check out this. Either watch the animated film or read the book.
Yep.
You won't be sorry. It may not change your mind, but you will at least get a better idea of the character.
I would say read the book. I mean, the animated film is pretty good, but it's just way too short to be able to encompass,
Oh, absolutely.
the whole. I mean, it's a single run. It was designed to be, a certain number of issues, and then that's it. But both of them are good. I'll give you that. All right. So my number two. This is the first book in a series called The Saga of the Pliocene Exile. And I'm going to try to do this really quickly because it takes some setup before I even get into talking about what the mythology part of it is.
Okay.
Because you got to explain why the Pliocene exile and all this stuff. So, set in the early 22nd century, humanity has been for about 100 years part of a enormous interstellar community called the Galactic Milieu. Brought into it because in the early 21st century, enough humans were exhibiting what they called operant psychic abilities. They knew they had them and they knew how to use them. And that is the trigger for all of the hundreds and thousands of races in the galactic milieu to find another species that had been advanced enough to be brought into it. With that, you give up a lot of stuff. And one of the things they gave up is the idea of any different sort of justice other than what the galactic milieu has. They believe that almost everybody who commits any kind of crime does so because of a neurological, a mental, emotional problem that can be cured. There are psychic healers called redactors. There are some people who cannot be healed. There are some people who don't want to be healed. And those people, up until a certain point, about a couple of decades before the first book takes place, the galactic milieu did not let people around that could cause problems. If you couldn't be healed, you were executed. So, a couple of decades before the book starts, some guy, some landowner, farmer in southern France, who has some Neanderthal caves on his land, is exploring the caves and discovers there's a chamber underneath one of them. That when he gets down into it, there's some sort of portal. They find out that the portal is a one-way portal, a time portal, to the very beginning of the Pliocene epoch, about 5.3 million years in the past. And the galactic milieu eventually convinces this guy to let them use it to offer people who don't like the galactic milieu, don't want to be healed, or can't be healed, a chance to do something different, to not just die. They can go to this, earlier part of the Earth and live out their lives, however short they might be, because they might get stomped by giant, mammal fauna or mastodons and whatever. But the one thing is, you can't be an operant psychic. That would be just too dangerous. And you can't reproduce. So what they do is women are given tubal ligations. They're given training on survival techniques and basic supplies, and off they go. So the story starts with the group that we follow through the 4 books are all various criminals or people who want to escape their current life in the galactic milieu. And they get their training, they go there, and immediately they're captured by aliens. So it turns out thousands of years before this first people wound up coming through the portal, aliens had crash landed on Earth They are mildly psychic, but they have technology that enhances psychic ability, which is something that is absolutely banned in the galactic milieu. Um, and it doesn't take very long for the people who know their history to realize that these two people, well, there are two races. There are actually two parts of the same race. They're a dimorphic race. The very tall, slender, very humanoid. In fact, they can interbreed with humans somehow. Tall, slender, very humanoid, almost completely hairless, nearly golden skin, except for long, straight hair. Tanu, and the shorter or gigantic, twisted, hairy, darker Furvulag. And once they realized that name, those two names, and some of the names of the people that are leading these groups, it is somehow the Tuatha De Danann and the Fir Bolg from Irish mythology.
Oh wow!
So one
So
of the I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are you the progenitors of the human race in this narrative?
No. And that's one of the things that really freaks the people out in here. And mind you, this is a minor background mystery. Is how long before any Homo species of any kind, Homo habilis, anything, developed, certainly long before Homo sapiens, roughly 5.28 million years before these legends supposedly were created in Ireland. How did that knowledge get to a species that didn't exist yet? So that's one of the, just a background mystery about this story. But the story is the fact that apparently the technology that these people, they're in torques that they put around their necks. Golden torques amplify psychic powers. Silver torques do a little bit, but also have essentially slave control technology. Even the silver torques take somebody who the galactic milieu screwed up and thought was not even a latent psychic, like had no psychic powers, triggers their psychic powers and makes them very powerful as a human. And they wind up being used as... I'm sorry, go ahead.
That has been being Harry Potter for a split second with the concept of the squib.
A little bit. But way, way before Harry Potter. These are books from the 80s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so basically the idea is these humans suddenly become pawns in, even though they're two parts of the same race, the Tanu and the Firvulag hate each other and they're always at war. And they become pawns in the conflicts between the Tanu and the Firvulag and in the internal politics of both of the societies. And it is one of the wildest, most imaginative, craziest... It's Game of Thrones in Irish mythology way before Game of Thrones ever was thought of. Horrible things happen to people you like. It's it's an amazing series. I would absolutely highly recommend it. Ultimately, when you do find out how the knowledge sort of moved forward, it still doesn't make a lot of sense. I think the author, Julian May, I think she sort of just went, wow, I got to answer that, don't I? And sort of came up with something at the end of the last book. But,
kind of reminds me of the Hitchhikers, of the Hitchhiker books to an extent.
Yeah, except it doesn't, I mean, there are funny parts of it, but it's not a humor book. It is a deadly serious political science fiction, science fantasy, mythology epic, of vast and epic scope. Just one of the things, so in this world, and they know that he's there, is a guy called the Adversary. This guy, Mark Remillard, who was of essentially a speciest nationalist racist. He believed that humans should never be subject to the control of anything non-human. And he fomented a human rebellion against the galactic milieu, and it almost worked. And that story is just some of the background color of this book. That this character is in the past. The last remnants of his group of rebels escaped by fleeing into the portal. They're in the past, and the galactic milieu believes that they, since nothing did change, that they obviously died out, they were killed or something, and so they're not sending anybody through to try to stop them. The amount of just sort of background information carried in just that knowledge that this guy is on this, in this time, is one of those things where I went looking for the books. Julian May hadn't written those books yet. But you read this and you go, okay, I want to read the story of the rebellion. I absolutely need to. And they weren't written yet. She didn't write them until years later. I'm like, damn it. So that's how incredible the world building is. It's really amazing. Anyway, I went on way too long. It's an amazing book. Julian May, the Many-Colored Land, the Golden Torque, the Non-Born King, and the Adversary. They're all under the Saga of the Pliocene Exile. Go check them out. Before we get to our number ones, Byron, we are doing the honorable mentions. Hit me up with your honorable mention.
My honorable mention is... This is like a way back deep cut. We're going to go, I want to say, early 80s, late 70s. Ulysses 31. It is basically the Odyssey in space. It was a French Canadian. It was like a French Canadian Japanese collaborative effort. And I was rewatching it today, and man, the dubbing is atrocious. Like, I mean, if you're curious as to like to see what this premise works, how well this premise works, check it out. But it hasn't aged well.
It's interesting. I was looking at the art when I started searching for the stuff, and I can see that French Canadian. I mean, this is really, the Little Prince.
Absolutely.
The blue alien there is very much from. Nope, it's not coming up. This
Galaxy Express, maybe.
No, but maybe. No, but I was thinking.
It has I was gonna say it has hints of Leiji Matsumoto, and I can't overstate this fact enough, but the theme song slaps so hard.
Well, that's cool. No, I think there's a French-made, really bizarre, essentially silent film. Something Planet. It's not Forbidden Planet because that's a. I can't think of the name of it. It's just really, but the aliens are blue with big eyes, and it's anyway. That design looks an awful lot like them.
I can see that.
All right,
I have a faint recollection of what you're talking about.
Yeah. So my honorable mention is also an anime, a little bit more recent, to be sure, and that is Noragami and Noragami Arigato. Noragami is the story of I always get her name wrong.
Yato.
Well, Yato is the one in the tracksuit who is a god, just not a very important one in the Japanese pantheon. Hiyori is the name of the schoolgirl. Hiyori gets into an accident and actually dies. She is brought back, but because of that, she is able to essentially leave her body and see both, and see the spirit world, in addition to being able to see the normal world. And in that, she runs into Yato, the god with the blue eyes in the tracksuit. Yato is a god of luck, but he doesn't even have his own shrine. So he is really, I mean, almost no power or ability whatsoever. And most of the gods that you meet in this are based on actual, or at least the names and the concepts. The looks are not. Like the blonde there is Bishamon, or Bishamonten, who is in fact a god of luck and a god of battle, and in traditional look is a very fierce, mustachioed, armored, typical god-looking type from Japanese mythology. This version of Bishamon is a lot better. But they're all gods of luck or fortune. All of them, but, and this is apparently a thing in Japanese mythology, gods can have sort of general categories and then specialized categories. So Bishamon is the god of luck, but is also a god of battle. One of Noragami's, one of Yato's closest friends is this just absolutely adorable, short little goddess with her own shrine, who is a goddess of luck. She just happens to be a goddess of really terrible bad luck. And it's just wonderful characterizations, interpretations of the gods of Japanese, mostly, Shinto based gods and concepts.
It's so wholesome.
It's pretty wholesome, yeah. I mean, you've got the whole, Hiyori and Yato, but I mean, nothing goes on there. There's not an awful lot of what you would expect to be even much, fan service or ecchi or anything. It's a pretty wholesome story, although with some really dark elements. Sorry, go ahead.
At the end of the first arc, I wanted to give Yato the biggest hug. I'm just like, I feel you, man.
Yep.
It's okay.
Yep.
Oh, you was right.
You ultimately find out that Yato is in fact a double, double interpretation, god, and he is a, god of luck. His other aspect is, I don't want to give it away, but it's something that is, the gods are helping to keep him in his.
He has a dark side.
Boy, does he have a dark side. And that is wonderfully explored in the second half as well. It's Jamal. Welcome to the show. Hey, and yes, anime. Now, I believe these are the only two animes. Oh, no, that's not true. We might even have another anime coming up in our list. So yeah, if you haven't seen Noragami or Noragami Arigato, go watch them. They're wonderful, wonderful. And not just because when it was running, every time I could take a picture of a Bishamon cosplayer, you bet I would. Although even years later, I took pictures of a really amazing Yato cosplayer. Which,
I think I saw that same Yato at Anime Boston a few.
Yep. I took the pictures at AAC, I believe, but yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, Byron, numero uno.
My numero uno is, I don't know. I'm just gonna go right in it. It's Dragon Ball. It's now when I say Dragon Ball, I'm talking about the pre-Z content. Like,
I gotta say, it took me a long time to find an image of original Dragon Ball.
Yes.
But I finally found one. So that's what's up there.
Yes. Now, Akira Toriyama created Dragon Ball, like the entire narrative, initially as a reinterpretation of Journey to the West, which is one of Asian folk, one of the most popular Asian folklores in the world. For those who are not aware, Journey to the West is about I'm going to use the Japanese names because I don't know many of the I only know a handful of Chinese names, but you have Sanjo Hoshi, a monk who has been tasked to carry a holy scripture out to the Western lands, and has been tasked and has to protect him. Um, a great monkey demon god creature, which depending on how you find out his legend is either Sun Wukong, which is the Chinese name, or Sun Goku, like which is where Dragon Ball got its name, got the main character's name. Um, as punishment for being a trickster, as punishment for being an all and out d bag to the world of the gods. And along the way, Wukong learns humility. He learns that there are things worth fighting for and protecting. And along the way, he picks up a couple other friends: Sha Gojo, Kappa, and Chohakai, a pig demon. Now, if you know your Dragon Ball lore, you might know a couple of the correlations. Um, Oolong, the shape-shifting pig Oolong is an analog for Chohakai, and Yamcha is an analog for Shagojo, because Gojo was a Kappa, but he was also he stole from humans. He robbed humans. Now, where things get interesting is Bulma is the analog for Sanzo Hoshi, the monk, who was after the Dragon Balls to gain her wish. Sanjo Hoshi she had the scriptures and was trying to understand their meaning and trying to attain oneness with existence. It was a bit of a far reach, but it's an interesting correlation.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's that far a reach. I mean, he took it way into different territories, but there's no question that was the inspiration, for basically all of the main characters of the original Dragon Ball.
Oh, absolutely. Primarily the first arc of Dragon Ball.
Yeah. Yeah. Before, it started involving, Saiyan aliens and, clones and androids and
gods.
He definitely took that wherever he wanted to go, but right at the core, right at the beginning, it is a pretty clear interpretation of Journey to the West.
Oh yes. And since I'm talking about Dragon Ball, I'm gonna take a brief moment to gush about my favorite arc in all of Dragon Ball, which is the Piccolo, the final world tournament in the original Dragon Ball storyline, the fight between Goku and Piccolo Jr. Who is Piccolo Jr., you might ask? The Piccolo that we know today, because the arc before that was against Piccolo Daimo, who was his father. He was the original incarnation of Piccolo. He was split away from Kami. Kami put him into a little bottle. Fast forward a couple of decades, he breaks free. He's older. He wants revenge. Goku beats him, but before Piccolo Daimo dies, he spits out an egg with his very life force in it, and that egg becomes the Piccolo that we know today. It's weird, but
oh yeah,
it's honestly, if you want to see peak Dragon Ball action without all the Deus Ex Machina, without all of the Super Saiyan nonsense, you owe it to yourself to watch this fight. I know you too. It is such a good time. It's the last time I feel that it's one of the last time that you see Goku really feeling like he has met his match.
Dragon Ball is way less annoying than Dragon Ball Z in that there are fights that do end in less than 5 episodes. Mm-hmm. So, even if it's got that really dated animation and so on, that alone makes it better.
Honestly, I'm going to say it. The manga, like Toriyama's manga work, is second to none when it comes to this. Like the way he makes use of the panels in the series. Watch the anime, but also read the manga. Do both because you get an idea of like the pencil, the line work, the way like seeing how if any like especially if you're interested in making your own comics because Akira Toriyama is a master class in that field.
Good recommendation. All right, my number one. No surprise here, folks, but you may not agree with the fact that it should even be on this list. It is Dune. And the reason it's on this list is that the whole concept of what the Bene Gesserit have done in what they call their Missionaria Protectiva, seeding planets all throughout the Galactic Empire with mythological legends about a Messiah that they can utilize to keep themselves safe if they're in any sort of a troubled situation by essentially having particularly any of the Reverend Mothers or any of the Bene Gesserit sisters having what should be unknowable knowledge from somebody outside of this prophecies of this Messiah. It is a brilliant subversion, but I'm going to call it an interpretation of the mostly Abrahamic, but I looked this up. There are a lot of other religions that have Messiah stories, legends of the Messiah. It uses
now when you brought this up, I was thinking you were going lean more towards like the Shakespearean angle of it.
Well, no, because Shakespeare wouldn't be myth unless there was a specific myth that Shakespeare used that this also used.
Well, I mean Macbeth.
Yeah, it's not a myth.
Yeah.
Macbeth
I didn't know what you meant as myth because I didn't know like what the parameters were. That's why I was thinking like Macbeth in my head.
Well, mythology generally involves supernatural forces, as does a lot of folklore or folk tales. But Macbeth is a historically based folk tale. But anyway, so no, in this case, it is the interpretation of, and a lot of people have a hard time with me or with somebody calling Christianity, Judaism, Islam, so on, myths, but they're myths. Now, there's no question about it.
Not everybody believes in it, so.
Right. They are supernatural, superstition tales of things that happened long ago, particularly the Abrahamic ones, because they're all based on the same really ancient mythology, and they only split off when they start getting up close to what we would consider ancient history, so Roman times or later. So the idea that the Bene Gesserit would take this and manipulate it in the genius way to both encourage the ultimate arrival of their actual planned eugenically created psychic Superman Messiah, the Kwisatz Haderach, but also use that mythology to keep any Bene Gesserit sisters safe if they find themselves in a difficult situation on a world that has one form or another of this Messiah myth that they've been planting. And it's just one of the other aspects that doesn't get talked enough about Frank Herbert's work, about just how incredibly subversive it is when it comes to religion, or particularly religion involving politics. A lot of people think Paul Atreides is the hero. He's the protagonist, But once you get into even the second book, Dune Messiah, and certainly by the time you're done the third book, Children of Dune, you realize that he may have been the protagonist of the first and most of the second book. He is a villain. He is not a malevolent villain, but boy, did what he do. What he did was villainous in a way that very, very few people in history have ever done.
Now I've only seen the movie, but I can already tell from an extent that like he has like a hubris to him.
Well, but he's in the first movie. Again, this is a spoiler for the movie, but he sees visions of what he could become, leading essentially a jihad, a holy war, throughout the galaxy that would kill billions. And that when he's in that tent during the sandstorm, when he's just completely, tripping balls on all of that spice that's in the air, he has that vision, and it destroys him. He breaks down and cries about the fact that that's a possible future for him, or an unavoidable future for him. He's not even sure which it is. So it is one of the best interpretations of a mythological based belief and political structure that is also one of the most wonderfully subversive ones ever written about, or in the case of the most recent movie, put on film. The previous Dune didn't really do much justice to it. And that's it, folks. That is our top 3 plus our honorable mentions favorite interpretations of mythology. Again, why are we doing this? Because on Thursday on Full Fat Spoiler Chat, we're going to be talking about the Eternals, or Eternals. I keep forgetting. There's no "the" at the start of that. Which is, of course, the MCU's own interpretation of mythology. Before that, on Tuesday, we will be doing our, so tomorrow night, Nerd Week Live, our Nerd News show, where we talk about nerd news that has happened before or since. It's been a day, folks. That has happened since our last show. And next Monday will be Anime Octane, and I believe, if we agreed on this, Byron, let me know, we're going to be doing our couple you should watch, couple you should avoid in winter 2022.
It'll be fun.
All right, cool. By that point, there will be like 3 episodes in, so that would be the usual 3 and let's see. So tune in then, folks, if you're into the anime stuff, and you want to look at what we want you to look at and what we want you to avoid looking at. Because there's some of that out there too, as there always is in every season. Before we go, if you are of a mind to check out anybody that has a Patreon page, check out ours. Patreon.com/nerdcaliber. That's the URL that's on your screen right now. We'd love to have you as a patron if you decide that you want to, of course. And we just have 3 tiers. The lowest one is $2. We use the money to go to cons. Again, assuming cons happen. They're now saying that the cloth masks are pretty much useless, folks. Get a surgical at least, and double it up if you can, or N95s or KN95s if you can get your hands on them. I was able to order N95s off of Amazon, no problem. So, anyway, that said, folks, please stay safe out there. Try to stay safe if there is a coming storm this weekend, which there seems to be. Ivan, welcome to the chat right at the very end of the show there on Facebook Live. Back to paper for you. Paper for you training a dog? No, anyway. Haha. Anyway, we'll see you at an upcoming show, folks. Ivan, thanks for coming in at the very end. Hopefully you were lurking through this, because if you weren't, otherwise, we're done and you missed it. Watch the replay. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Byron, give us a goodbye.
Hey, guys. Byron D0. on multiple facets of the internet. Real name Byron McNeil. If you can spare a couple of minutes, check out my webtoon series. It's called Sisterhoods. It is I'm talking about reimagining. If it's perfectly, it is a reimagining of Little Red Riding Hood, told in the spirit of cyberpunk slash post apocalypse. Check it out.
Check it out, folks. Ivan, I get it now. Says you've been watching a nice long while. Excellent. And the paper refers to masks, of course. Yeah. Although I was just watching one of the news shows, and it is technically not actually paper. It's a plastic that's formed very much like paper, but because it's a plastic, it has much, much less breathability than paper. So that's why the surgical masks are, you know, and I assume that's what you're referring to. Everybody thinks they're paper masks, but they're not. Anyway, I realized that I forgot to do our intros at the beginning. So thank you for giving the intro at your outro, Brian. Byron. Wow, it really has been a day. And since I never said it, I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber. We will see you at an upcoming show. Please stay safe out there, folks. Thanks for hanging in the chats and saying stuff. You have not been living a lie, Ivan. I thought they were paper too.